he learned to relax, and occasionally again chided for it, commented that any man who has a bow and has it constantly strung tight will soon lose the spring in his bow. The bow must be unstrung. When somebody saw him with his head down once and he was pensive and deep in thought and said, "Come on, Joseph, hold your head up like a man," the prophet's response was, "Look at those heads of grain." And the man looked out at some ripe field of wheat and saw that the heaviest ones, the ones full of grain, really bent down. The prophet was implying there's some heavy grist in my mind, brother. But he could unleash, and thank the Lord for that. Two other glimpses of his home life. He was inclined, whenever he was mistreated, to get even by offering the hospitality of his home. That meant Emma and her talents in cooking. It's unbelievable how often he did it and with what little warning. And he occasionally said, "If you cannot accept our religion, accept our hospitality." There were times when the cupboard was bare, and you've all heard the story of the night they had nothing to eat but a little bit of cornmeal. They made out of it a Johnny cake, as it was called, and the prophet offered the blessing as follows: "O Lord, we thank thee for this Johnny cake and ask thee to send us something better." Before the meal was over, there was a knock at the door, and there stood a man with a ham and a turkey. The prophet jumped to his feet and said, "You see, Emma, my prayer was answered." He shared and shared until he was utterly impoverished. Now, a few comparisons. We have the testimony of the governor of California, who had known Joseph in the Missouri period, that he found him a man of great leadership gifts, a man who instinctively commanded admiration and response. And do not forget that Stephen A. Douglas, whose dubbed title, "The Little Giant," was, one source claims, applied to him by Joseph Smith. The same Stephen Douglas that debated Lincoln, and the same Stephen Douglas that did aspire, as the prophets predicted he would, to the presidency of the United States, had many admiring things to say of Joseph during the Illinois stage. Alexander Donovan, the one who refused to shoot the brothers Smith in the square at noon and said, "Anyone who does so, I will bring before a tribunal, so help me God." Alexander Donovan said that Mormon men generally were a cut above others he knew in that period. J.W. Woods, the prophet's last attorney, with him the afternoon of June 27th, 1844, never, of course, a Latter-day Saint, observes that you could see the strength of Joseph Smith in his manner and dignity. But, he added, you could see by his face alone that he was not a bad man. Daniel H. Wells, who heard him twice in Nauvoo, Squire Wells it was, a kind of 19th century attorney, heard him speak of the principle that every son and daughter of Adam, sooner or later, whether in this life or the next, will hear the gospel of Jesus Christ in its purity and in its fullness and have adequate option to choose it. And that those who choose it will have absolute right to all the blessings that come only in this life. How? By proxy. And this man, trained in law and in justice, said, I don't know what else can be said about that man. His mind is the most just I have ever encountered. We have from Brigham Young a comment on how Joseph was different than Hiram. And beyond the obvious and platitudinous comments is this one, that Joseph, more than his brother, was susceptible to the continuing impressions and revelations of God. That is, he did not become so rigidly bound to what had been given that he was unsusceptible to what yet had to be given. That is a tendency. One can harden, claiming integrity, on the past tradition and can thus become immune to living revelation. Joseph, says Brigham, more than his brother,